This is Cold Start. Welcome back.
So as a continuation to our last discussion about going to the track, once you've been going to the track for a while, you might want to think about going racing.
I feel like that's a natural progression. If we've gone to the track for a track day in our street car, we've enjoyed it, right? Maybe we've started to outgrow our street car. We're outgrowing the track day.
Yeah, there's the point where you're like, all right, I'm doing what I can do in this car, and I feel like maybe the limitation isn't just me anymore. Maybe it's the car, the setup, and it's time to progress.
And we're not just going to the track just to have fun, to enjoy ourselves, but we're starting to get a little bit more competitive. Now we want to go after a lap time. We might want to, go wheel to wheel with other cars.
Before we get into going wheel to wheel with other cars, right, there's also racing by yourself. Sort of, let's call it like non-wheel to wheel, time formats.
Time trials,
right, or time attack, I guess is one.
Which that is a good first step for people moving out of the track day realm, getting into time attack, time trials. That starts to bring in that competitive element, but doesn't necessarily require a competition license or a race car. There are some time trial groups that you can still run a street car and something without a full roll cage and things like that. So it's a good way to transition out of just being in a track day where there's a variety of different experience levels that are on track at the same time, and moving into a group where there is this unified focus towards chasing lap times and going faster and being competitive, not necessarily directly with another person, but you'll be categorized into different groups, and based on the speed and modifications that have been done to your vehicle, you'll be compared against people with similar speeds and similar builds.
Yeah, I mean, different than the track day, right, where people are sort of self-selecting or maybe being chosen for in the beginner or the intermediate or the advanced group, right? This is classes by vehicle types. Sometimes it's by experience too, but generally it's trying to class vehicles to be, like competing against like, so that the times they put down are meaningfully compared versus, a really fast car against a really slow car. There's no point in making a competition out of that. That's more of a show.
Right. And when we move into these places where we're now being competitive on a racetrack, the biggest thing of any sort of organization is they're trying to remove the vehicle element. And it's comparing yourself of what is possible in those vehicles, not necessarily just drive the fastest in the fastest car, but boiling it down of comparative of if these cars are similar, who as a driver can be the better driver.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be the exact same car. Like there are single make series where you'll see wheel-to-wheel racing, but frequently at a time attack type event, time trial, you'll see lots of different cars that they try to class together roughly by their power, their aero, as roughly as they can get close. And then it's about, watching your lap time and, repeating those runs till you get faster and faster and trying to reduce your lap time. And of course, the winner's the fastest one.
And time trial is another place where if you are one of those people that listen to Track Cars Are Stupid episode and you're like, well, no, track cars are cool and like building out a track car is fun, time trial is really a good place to go because you can maintain the street ability of your car and still focus on building it out. If you do like building cars, trying to make them faster, time trial and time attack is a great place for that. It really encourages people to build their own race cars and see how fast they can be, not only as a driver, but as a mechanic as well. So time trial and time attack is really cool in that aspect that there is such a variety and they kind of allow you to do what you want to do. And there's always going to be a category that's unlimited where whatever you can dream up, however big of a wing you want to throw on your car, there will always be a category that you can exist in.
Yeah, that open class is kind of a neat thing that you don't see in a lot of other forms of, especially wheel-to-wheel racing, where you're really trying to compete against the racetrack. Like what's a fast lap that you can put down at this racetrack when it's just you, just this car, going as quickly as you can? How well have you mastered that track? How well have you mastered that car driving at the track?
And for an example of this, I actually competed at a Grid Life event in their time attack group at Laguna Seca a year ago, 2024. What was so cool is that I was in the unlimited category with the vehicle that we brought. But within that unlimited group, you had high horsepower, recognizable street cars, Mustangs, things like that. But you also had an LMP3 car, I was in a modified road course sprint car. And then you also had Robin Shute, who was in his Wolf Pikes Peak car. So it was kind of run what you brung, right? Whatever you can do to be the fastest around the track, they allow you to have that space to be able to do so, which is great. We love innovation. We love creative stuff within the motorsport realm. Unlimited classes allow the creative juices to flow a little bit more.
Yeah, Global Time Attack is another group that organizes time trial type events. It's different as a spectator, right? You're watching this series of drivers one at a time going around the track, or maybe there'll be a little overlap, in places where there wouldn't be the danger of two cars getting too close to each other. But very different than the wheel-to-wheel world, both from the driver's perspective as well as from being a spectator.
Now, after a little bit of time of being in time attack, time trial, you might get a little bored. Now, as a racer, and we tend to look at time trial as only a piece to the puzzle, right? In the racing world, time attack is qualifying.
That's right.
You do that on one day, and then you come race another day. So let's shift gears here of, you get bored with time trial a little bit. Now we want to move into the wheel-to-wheel world. We want to get into competition racing against other people.
So just like going to your first track day or any track day, you have to find an event that's going on. Similarly with wheel-to-wheel racing, there's different organizers and sanctioning bodies. They all have different requirements for what it takes to participate. So first and foremost, most of them are going to require some kind of license. Maybe that's a competition license or a racing license, or some groups recognize licenses from other groups. They might not have their own sanctioning process. But a group like SCCA or NASA, they generally have their own qualification programs where you can go, do instruction, participate in a few races. It's sort of a provisional race license. To get qualified, you have to go and be clean for those races. You have to not break any rules. You have to finish cleanly, but at which point you qualify for this race license.
Yeah, and between those two, I think we should focus mainly on NASA, SCCA. I think that's the most approachable way to get into or get a competition license. To some people, it might be a little bit foreign of, well, I have a driver's license. Is that good enough? Well, no, competition license basically recognizes that you've done all of the necessary paperwork, educational process, and the on-track time to be able to be considered safe to enter into competition. Now, the main differences of a NASA license versus an SCCA competition license, both of them will get you to the same place, but how you acquire one will be a little bit different. So for the NASA side of stuff, it's a little bit more approachable because you can apply and get your competition license through NASA with a street car. So their HPDE program, their track day program, once you graduate stage 4, you can apply for a competition license. You'll have to take a written test, no cheating, and an on-track portion as well, where an instructor will sit with you while you're on track to sign you off that you're going to be okay to get a competition license. Now, in this situation for the NASA side, it's going to be a provisional competition license. And what that means is you are allowed to enter their competition groups that NASA hosts at their events as a rookie. So you get the cool little orange sticker on the back.
The big R.
Or the R. And you'll be watched very closely for 4 races. You're not allowed to drop a wheel into the dirt. You cannot obviously make contact with another vehicle. You cannot have any sort of spin or incident, right? So for those first 4 races as a rookie, it's all about seeing the checkered flag. Green flag to checkered flag. If you've ever done iRacing and you're trying to graduate out of rookie license in iRacing, it's the same thing. Don't go off. Don't touch anyone. Don't get any of those penalties that iRacing gives you. In the real world, same thing. You want to get clean. Once you complete those 4 races, then you'll have a full competition license, which is pretty interchangeable. SCCA, on the other hand, to get licensed through SCCA in the Northern California region, they do it once a year. So if you can't make that one weekend, it's a little bit tough. But if you go to an SCCA licensing school, you also have to bring a full race car. So that means fully caged, harnesses, belts, window net, everything up to date. Everything's in their rule book if this is a little bit foreign to you. Another great thing for that weekend is you can actually rent a race car. A lot of people do, because if you're just getting into racing and you're just getting your competition license, it might be pretty unlikely that you have a race car already at home. So a lot of people will rent a car to do the SCCA school. What's nice about the SCCA school is that it's just one weekend. So you do one weekend, you do all of your practice starts, practice races, all of that stuff in one condensed weekend, as well as taking some written tests. After that, you have a full competition license through SCCA. So it doesn't matter if it's through SCCA or NASA. Both of those licenses are pretty widely recognized within the racing world of you've done the bare minimum to be a good, safe racer.
Yeah, the rental option is something that shouldn't be overlooked. A lot of people want to go build a car or buy a car, and that can be an obstacle to getting into racing for people. But there's a lot of outfits that organize and, manage a fleet of cars that are designed specifically to meet the requirements and the specs of these various series. So you can get into a car, use it for the program, get licensed, get qualified, make sure that's something that you're going to want to be out there driving. It gets you experience behind the wheel in something without having to take the plunge of going out and buying one for yourself or building one. And these groups who manage the fleets of cars, they know them inside and out. They know what the requirements are. They can help you get acclimated. They help you get comfortable in the car. They know how to operate them. If something goes wrong, they have parts on hand, know how to fix it. It's not you as just a solo person trying to figure all these things out at one time. So it's a really good way to sort of get a step up into the racing competition and qualification process.
And if you're wondering, how do I get in touch with these people that rent race cars? How do you find that? Do I go on www.rentaracecar.com? But the easiest way is that obviously you're doing track days. You've already had a lot of track time. When you're in the paddock and you're curious about getting into a race group and there already are race groups racing the same day that you're doing your track day, go up to those groups and ask them, hey, does anyone rent one of these cars? I'm thinking about getting into the series. Is there someone that has a fleet of them that does rentals, things like that? There usually is one individual, at least, that's doing some rentals within that racing group, whether that's a Spec E30, a Spec Miata, Spec Racer Fords. All of these groups, all these spec classes or single-make racing series usually tend to have one or two people that have extras.
Yeah, they're generally recognizable because these are people's businesses that they're running to rent these cars out. So they're going to have their logos, they're going to have their livery on the car. There's probably their website or their Instagram or something that you can go look up more information about. So just pay attention while you're out in the paddock, while you see these kind of waves of cars going in and out. Look for a logo or a name of something, or just do a little Googling close to you for arrive and drive race car, rental race car. And again, there'll be that kind of similar class to what you're seeing out in the club racing world, GT86s, those kind of cars, Spec Miata and all the rest of those. So they're common for that reason. They're well known. There's lots of them around. You can really get a good baseline in what it's like being in the race car and having it operated by, people who really know them.
And now you've gotten a competition license. How do you choose a series to get into? And this answer is going to vary depending on you as an individual, what you prefer, what you like, but also a really key thing to take into account, the region in the country. We're kind of assuming you're in America, but the region within the country that you're going to be racing. There are different series that are on the East Coast that are super, super popular, that there's not that many cars on the West Coast, and vice versa. We're located here at Sonoma Raceway. We pretty much know what's popular and what's cool in Northern California. It could even change to the Southern California region. So depending on what you're looking for, if you're really aimed towards, I'm a BMW guy, I want to drive a BMW, look into the BMW series. But if you're the type of person that's like, I want to get into racing because I want to race a lot of people, I want competition, then that will determine what series you get into based on what is everyone racing within your region. Now, not only the region piece of it, but also the sanctioning body. There's some series that are really popular with NASA that aren't as popular in SCCA. So if you're an SCCA person, or that's who is putting on most of the events in your area, then look into those things as well, or even other organizations like Grid Life and some others that are starting to pop up.
Yeah, and they vary regionally. Up in the Pacific Northwest, there's the Pro 3, which is sort of the equivalent of a Spec E30 or Spec E36.
But way nicer.
It depends where you are. Another kind of venue not to overlook is racing schools. There aren't as many of them as there used to be, but certain racetracks or even have kind of organizations that move around from track to track offering racing school, teaching you in their fleet of vehicles how to get competent, how to get fast, how to be safe in that type of car to go wheel-to-wheel racing. Some of them are really well known, Skip Barber, Bondurant. They change all the time. There's groups coming and going. It's sort of a fluid space. Here at Sonoma Raceway, there's not currently a resident racing school, but we do see several of these coming and going. One of the nice things about those is you'll get to go meet some instructors. Generally, the instructors aren't only stuck to a single racing school. They'll have clients who race in various series, so they'll have insight into that stuff, and you can get to meet some people. One of the other things is that some of the groups, I think SCCA and possibly NASA, have this sort of reciprocity where if you've gone through a Skip Barber program or if you've gone through a racing school with a recommendation from an instructor who's known to them, who's licensed with them in the past, they might just take as a letter of recommendation to give you a provisional license to get with that group. So it's not to be overlooked. It can be a bit more expensive than just going out for the club days. But if you're the kind of person who likes to go to a school or be in that sort of educational environment and use that as a way to kind of get your leg up into racing, that's another path.
My biggest piece of advice for anyone that's getting into wheel-to-wheel racing for the first time from track driving, go down in speed. Now, this doesn't sound fun or exciting, but there is going to be a big piece that if you go into a racing series in a momentum car, right? We call them momentum cars because they have no horsepower and you have to keep the momentum up in the corners. But what's so great about these cars, even though you're not going to be going as fast as you could in your street car down the straightaway, you're going to learn a lot more. And we're assuming that if you're going into racing, that your mindset is that you want to learn and become a better driver. And a momentum car is a better tool to do that. So something with low horsepower is going to be a better bet. And for me, when I got into racing, I had two choices. It was either Spec E30 or Spec Miata. Both of those in the Northern California region were pretty popular at the time, right? Spec E30's kind of died, story for a different time. But choosing between those two, I went with Spec E30. I thought they were cooler. That was my rationale, and I stuck with it. I thought the E30 guys were cool. I liked the group. That's another thing. When you get into a racing series, especially at the club level, there is a club aspect to it in the sense of you want to hang out with people that you enjoy, that are fun, and also they behave in the ways that you want them to on track and off track. The Spec E30 guys were awesome in the NorCal region. These cars are phenomenal. They make only 160 horsepower. Doesn't sound very exciting, but the cars can carry decent speed through the corners. They're on a DOT slick tire. Back in the day, it was a Toyo RR, the Proxy RR. Now they run Maxxis. They can handle really well. And over the course of a lap, if you drove a momentum car, whether it was a Spec Miata or a Spec E30 very well, you could outdrive someone who is an average driver in a Porsche or a Corvette. So there's a lot of room to grow in a slow series like Spec E30 and Spec Miata as a driver. And that's the biggest piece. You don't want to out-car yourself when you get into racing. You want to put yourself in a car that you can grow as a driver, develop core basic skills. Plus, these cars are cheap. So when you bang them up and you run into someone or you make mistakes, the repair bill is not going to be as substantial as if you got into, and I know this is a big step from an E30, but an E36 or an E46. Even a Spec E46, all the parts, a little bit more expensive. And when you go racing, you're going to find out consumables and just running costs of the car, that's what's going to start adding up.
Yeah, this is why you want to develop your technique in something that might be a bit more modestly priced than even you can afford and with lower horsepower than you think might be fun, right? We all want to kind of gravitate toward the kind of cars we like, so we're not telling you not to do that, but set your sights on something that's a good way in and a starting path. If you shoot for something that's too expensive, you're going to not be able to keep up with it. If you shoot for something that's too powerful, you're going to be outclassed by people who have built their technique in these lower horsepower cars over time. That idea of momentum is really key, right? Part of the goal of that is being on throttle as much as you can be around that lap. That teaches you the technique of how to load the car, how to use the weight balance and weight distribution of the car through a corner, how to maximize the amount of time that you're getting on the throttle and using it. You also need to develop your braking technique. And if you're doing that in a high horsepower car or a heavier car, you're going to find that it's less forgiving to you. So when you're just getting started out in racing, and don't forget, there's this aspect of being right next to another person. There's a lot of trust that comes in racing wheel to wheel. You have to acknowledge and expect that the people around you are going to follow the rules and do it generally the same way so that you can get close to each other at speed. I mean, that's an essential part of this, being able to really push hard and put 9 or 10 tenths down when you're out there racing, is expecting that people are going to follow this sort of protocol. So getting yourself up to speed in something that might not be quite as sexy to start, but you can develop a path from these cars to the next couple of levels, is really essential. And you know what? It'll take you some time to get good in those levels too. There's people who they find a lot of enjoyment even in those lower horsepower momentum cars, and they stick there for a while. So there'll be people out there who are really good, and you'll be able to learn from them by seeing what they do and learning from them directly. People are pretty friendly. It is a club-going atmosphere, and that's a great way to kind of get your footing and get up to speed so that you can transition from just trying to finish a race to getting to the point where you're competitive and actually competing for places.
And I'd also recommend these single make series for the simple fact that you can measure yourself directly to other people. There's going to be people that are going to have been driving in this car for years, 5 years, decades. They're going to be really, really good at it. And when you come in as a rookie and you're 5 seconds off the pace, which in racing is a lot of time, you know that it's a direct comparison. You're both relatively in the same car, right? They're built the same way to the rule books. And so when you do a lap, you can directly compare yourself. If I'm 5 seconds off, that actually means something in a single make series. Whereas, like we talked about, if you're just driving a Porsche and you're 5 seconds faster than the guy in a Corvette, well, that really doesn't mean anything. So when you first get into racing, pick a single make series that's going to really make you focus on your ability as a driver, and it's going to measure you up against everyone else in a more fair comparison.
You know, maybe in your daydreams, you're like, someday I could see myself doing like IndyCar, or I really want to go and do endurance racing, right? So it's not just these production make cars available to you. There's Formula Mazda, there's Spec Racer Ford, there's all these other types of cars that are available out there, open wheel, closed wheel, sports prototype, production cars converted into race cars, all that are available. So kind of go a little bit with your heart, but use your head to lead you towards something that is a good match for your budget, for your capability, and that gives you a path to advance and gives you opportunities to race, right? Don't pick some platform that's so obscure and esoteric because you think it's cool, but you're the only person in your entire state who's out there trying to find other fellow racers with it. That's the club aspect. You have to find a way to get along with other people. Some of it's choosing the kind of car other people are going to want to race in.
And there's no reason to go out there and go racing if there's no one to race against, right? So find a good group of people where you actually have some competition. You can actually race wheel to wheel and develop racecraft.
It can be kind of a drag going out there and racing against like 3 other people. You know, you want to have a big field too, right? That makes the competition fun. You see division of the different levels of experience and expertise, and a big pack sounds cool. Come roaring down the straight, if there's a rolling start. All these cars out there together makes for a really cool experience altogether.
And the more cars you have on track and you have in your racing group, the more likely it is that you're going to have someone to race with. We always like to say, like, when there's a big field, everyone has a dancing partner. And what we mean by that is that everyone has someone to race against. If you've done sim racing and things like that, it gets pretty boring when everything gets strung out and you're just out there by yourself. Now it just turns into another lapping day, time trial session. It's not racing anymore. The fun of racing is having cars around you. It's, can I hold off the guy behind me? Can I catch the guy in front of me? How am I going to make this pass happen? It's the high-speed chess match aspect of wheel-to-wheel racing that makes it exciting. So a good number of people in your field, tight groups, so tight packs of racing, that's what makes it exciting.
There's a point where the technique matters, but then there's this strategy, right? How are you going to go about winning this race? It's not just drive the fastest lap you can, because guess what? The line you would normally drive on in a time trial or on a track day to go as fast as you can, is now occupied by some other car. And you're going to have to find a way around that car if you can't get on the optimal racing line. So part of that chess match is figuring out where to place your car, what to do if you're out of the position that you want to be in, how to deal with the fact that there's somebody in front of you who you think you can get past is maybe not driving as quickly as you can, but they're not giving you the opportunity in the places where you think you can do that. That's all part of this give and take, the push and pull of racing that makes it really fun and requires you to be able to think ahead, plan for what's going to happen, maybe plan for 2 laps from now to be able to put that pass together. It makes it a lot more exciting than just step on the throttle and go fast and somehow you're going to be faster than somebody else. You're in the same kind of car. So it really requires that awareness all around you, 360 degrees, awareness of the changing dynamics of what's happening on and off track, and just putting together the best plan so that, you can advance in the race.
To talk about one final form of motorsport that you can get into as a beginner if you want to get into competition racing, it's endurance racing. So endurance racing, typically what we were talking about of like club level groups, they usually do sprint races. It's like a 30-minute race. A 50-minute race is long. So sprint races are really quick. They're good because 30 minutes might not sound like a lot of time. Once you get into it and you have that adrenaline going and you're fighting hard, 30 minutes seems like eternity. So that's a good level when you first get into it. If you're itching for more seat time, if you're like, I want to be in the car for longer and I want more seat time, I want more practice around other vehicles, I want to develop my racecraft even more of coming up on lapped cars. How can I negotiate a slower vehicle in front of me? How can I race the people around me? Endurance racing is a great way to get more seat time. It's also a great way to include some of your other buddies. So endurance racing, some of these races could be 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. Endurance racing is a longer stint from the green flag to the checkered flag. Now, with these longer races, that doesn't mean you have to do all of the racing yourself. You'll split that up. If you got a team of 3 or 4 drivers, there'll be driver changes. One person will get out of the car during a pit stop, another person will get in. Usually a stint is about an hour and a half, or when you run out of gas. That's usually what measures a stint.
I think a lot of cars are limited by, the size of their fuel tank. There's only so long you can drive before you have to come in and get fuel. One of the things to consider, and I didn't really know this when I was starting out, endurance makes it sound like you have to be some kind of major athlete. You think of an endurance race, you immediately go to those 24-hour races that are super famous. But endurance racing really just means you're changing drivers on some interval. It might be a variable interval, but it's once in a while. And so, I've been in endurance races where the stint was 45 minutes. You drive 45 minutes, you get out of the car, another person gets in the car, and then they drive. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's an hour and a half and you're done. Maybe there's multiple driver changes where you get another chance to get back in the car. Sometimes that varies depending on who your other drivers are and what their experience level is. There are forms that are called Pro-Am, where you as the amateur or sort of rookie driver are going out there with somebody more experienced as the pro. And so there's something to negotiate in terms of how many stints each driver will do. Some of the sanctioning bodies have a requirement, like all of the amateurs start, or all of the amateurs need to have at least this much time in the car, just to try again to equalize across multiple drivers in the same kind of car. So don't get stuck on that word endurance like you're thinking about, going for a 22-hour hike and you have to be up to the challenge. It's really about the fact that the race overall takes longer than a single sprint race might, but it's more about that change of driver and the opportunity to get different people behind the wheel within the same confines of what we call one race.
And on the club level, a couple organizations to highlight is AER.
American Endurance Racing.
Yes, American Endurance Racing, and WRL. Now, on the club level, a lot of the cars that are doing endurance racings, it might range from Miatas to LMP3 cars. And you have GT4 cars and GT3 class cars. It's going to be a wide range of vehicles. What's cool about AER specifically, I think WRL is very similar in this sense as well. Just because it's a 24-hour race or a 12-hour race doesn't mean it's 12 continuous hours. So they'll split it up X amount of hours one day, everyone goes home, you get to go to the hotel, you get to sleep a little bit, and then everyone comes back the next day. They'll throw another green flag on the second day, and then you'll race to the finish. So it doesn't necessarily have to be one continuous race. These organizations have started to split it up, making it a little bit more user-friendly. Those people that might be a little bit too concerned to race through the night, which I would argue racing at night is one of the coolest experiences you can ever have. And if you can find yourself in an opportunity to race in the night, I would do it. I would 100% do it.
When you're first starting out, it's a bit much to manage, right? You'd probably want to do it during the day so you can have visibility as something that you don't have to manage for. But there's no guarantee that the weather is going to be favorable, right? So that always can come up. WRL is the World Racing League, and they're just another endurance racing league where multiple classes of cars go out. Generally in sprint races, they are single make or single class of car. In a lot of endurance racing, you'll have this sort of overlap with multiple classes on the grid at the same time. So in addition to managing wheel-to-wheel racing with cars that are sort of in the same class as you, you also have this issue of traffic, where there's potentially classes of cars that are faster or slower than yours. You will encounter these cars while you're out on track during the race. And there's multiple races actually happening. There's the overall win, but then there's the class win and placing within those. And generally, the way these will sort of be organized is there'll be some practices before, and everybody's out on track during these practices, maybe just their class, or maybe it's open. And then there's a qualifying event. The qualifying event could be like a time trial, except you have multiple drivers on track, right? It's probably, if you're thinking about going racing, you're probably pretty familiar with watching races and the qualifying event where people are out there competing for trying to get the best time within a limited period of time out on track together. So that'll help form the grid and the starting order for the race that you go into. So this is common to both sprint racing and endurance racing, but key in endurance racing is now you'll have your grid for your class. And if there are other classes also out there with you, they'll be gridded up in some order. Maybe the faster cars are at the back, maybe they're at the front. You're all sharing the track together for this common race, but really there's multiple races happening within that overall race.
And with endurance racing, most of the vehicles are rentals. It makes the most amount of sense, right? A lot of the teams will have vehicles and they'll put on an effort to go do these endurance races, and they'll sell the seats. So you basically just buy into the program, you'll pay for your seat within that vehicle. So it's pretty approachable in that sense that you don't have to bring your own car to the endurance race. There's these teams that'll supply pit crews, fuelers, tire changers, all this stuff. So when you go in an endurance race, when you pay for that seat, you pay for your seat time, it covers everything, which it's a fun experience to be a part of. It's exciting. It's just a totally different approach to racing. And the sprint mindset is all out, all the time, take all the opportunities you can. And then when you go endurance racing, the mindset changes. You need to take care of the car over a long period of time. You're trying to minimize mistakes as much as possible. You're still being aggressive to be fast and you want to be first, but you first must finish the overall race. So there's this different attitude and mindset that goes into endurance racing, which is pretty cool. So if you have opportunities and that's something that you've been thinking about wanting to go and do, look into those organizations, try to find a team that's putting on a program, save up your money. Racing is never cheap, but it's something to check out.
You know yourself better than anybody else, right? Some people sort of gravitate toward individual sports. Some people gravitate toward team sports. Individual sport in this case is more of the sprint race. You have a team that's supporting you. You have a crew. That's part of your team too, but it's really all about your performance out there in the car. In the endurance race, it's much more of a team type of an aspect where the combined performance of all these individuals working together plus the crew is what makes a win or not a win. It makes up your performance in the race. So being able to rely on other people to bring the car back home, to not go out there and be so reckless that, you know, the other one or two or three people on your team don't even get a chance to race in some cases, or don't get that additional stint because somebody took an unnecessary chance. That's one of the dynamics that comes into endurance racing, which is, you know, being able to share a car, being able to get performance out of the car, being able to set it up in such a way that multiple people can drive it and have it be functional for all those drivers. So I think there's even more strategy to the endurance race than in the sprint racing wheel-to-wheel wise. You have to take advantage of and account for, you know, driver changes, sometimes refueling, other changes of the car and the environment, the time of day, the conditions of the racetrack and that time of the day, the conditions of your tires when you get out there, the conditions of the tires when you bring it back in. All those things are changing throughout, and a few more dynamics that are added into the strategy of endurance racing versus sprint.
The biggest piece at the end of the day is whether it's endurance racing, sprint racing, GT cars, open wheel, spec class, you're renting a car, you have your own. Whenever you get the itch that you want to drive hard and you want to drive competitively and you want to drive against the clock, get out of your local track day group. You don't need to be that guy taking track days too seriously, getting frustrated when you come up on lap traffic that's ruined your personal best. You're at a track day. And if you're getting that frustration, you need to graduate to time trial, time attack, or think about getting into a race group. Those two things are very separated. Keep track days fun.
The same mindset applies when you first started going to the track. You remember those days where you just want to go out there and have a good time and figure out how to bring your car home, right? When you go racing for the first time, there's a lot of people out there with a lot more experience than you. And even if you think you were the fast person at your track day, you're not going to be the fast person at the race right out. So I remember when I first started racing, I didn't even want to go racing. I joined this club so that I'd get more practice time and we'd go out, and it was a bunch of people all on the same kind of car. And I realized they were going to do this thing on these weekends that I wasn't participating in where they'd go race each other. And I didn't feel that competitive. I kind of felt like, well, it's fun. I like driving fast on my own and kind of figuring out what I can do. But there was this aspect, the rest of my club was off going and doing this thing and having a blast and having all these points that they can compare with one another and these experiences that they had together that were just super bonding. And I was sort of missing out. So at first I said, look, let me stretch beyond my comfort zone just a little bit. I don't need to go out and be super competitive. I'm not going to go out there and try to win my first race, be on pole position in the first qualifying session. I'm just going to go out there and I want to finish a race. You know, that was one of the things I sort of did myself a favor, which is setting my expectations accordingly when I just started doing this. And I didn't even know that I would want to continue doing it. But it's just like going to the track. It's on your own, just like going to the track for a track day. It becomes compelling. It's super addictive. You get out there and this feeling that you're out there with other people trying to do the same thing and everybody's trying to be the best they can be together. I don't know what to say about it. It's just so, it's overwhelming, right? The feeling of it, to get to the end of the race and to have completed, to not have wrecked your car, to have survived it. You'll be out of breath. You'll be sweating. You'll be feeling your heart pounding in your chest. All of these things, it's such a rush and it's such a cool feeling. And for me, it went from very quickly, I hope I just finished this race, to I don't want to be last next time. Maybe I could be ahead of the slowest guy out there, to, hey, I'm starting to be faster than a few other people on track. Maybe I have a shot at doing this and I can continue to improve. And part of that progression, it's like learning anything. The feeling that feels good about learning is in making a progression and building on what you've learned previously. And if you continue to do this racing, you'll get better, you'll get more experience, you'll learn how to do things that maybe that were intimidating to you before. And then you're starting to master and you can focus on other aspects of racing out there.
Yeah, not to think that there's this glass ceiling in track days, that there's something else out there. To get into wheel-to-wheel racing, get into competition, that it is still approachable. The same way that it was approachable to bring your street car out to the track, making that transition from doing track days and getting into competition, it's not as scary of a leap as people might think. It's pretty approachable. If you're spending a decent amount of money on your track day car with tires and fuel and upkeep and maintenance and modifications, you'll be surprised at the reasonable prices that you can get into a full-blown race car and go wheel-to-wheel racing. So we would encourage people, if you're having fun with your track days and you want more out of it, don't be discouraged. Don't be intimidated by getting into wheel-to-wheel racing. It's pretty welcoming and it's a lot more fun. If you thought track days were addictive, go wheel-to-wheel racing and go try to do a track day again. You'll never go back.
No. And one of the other things that's cool about this is a lot of people who are doing track days kind of get used to doing track days at the same track all the time, right? They want to have that baseline of comparing their performance at the same place, even though it changes over time and the people who are out there change and the kind of cars that are out there changing. a lot of these race series, they move around. They're going to sort of force you outside your comfort zone to get to learn another track, to get competent at learning a new track quickly, learning how to deal with conditions that might be the same from track to track, but the way they're put together is different. So it's a really good way to get experience in driving at different places, having the baseline not be necessarily the same racetrack, but the same kind of car with roughly the same group of people. That changes the dynamics a little bit. You get to know these people. That's sort of the club of the club racing atmosphere. But you're all on the road together. You know, when you go on a road trip with your friends, how much fun that is, those experiences, even if they're the same kind of thing you would have done back at home, it changes it. It gives it a mystique. It gives it this aura that you couldn't quite capture at home. So when you're racing and you're out there and yeah, the cars are the same and the people are the same, but the environment's totally different. It's exciting in a way that going to the same track over and over really never can be.
Yeah, and that was another thing we forgot to mention of talking about NASA and SCCA and some of these other organizations. They're nationally recognized organizations. So if on the West Coast, if I'm running in Spec Miata with NASA, I can travel to any NASA event across the country, to any racetrack, and I can run my Spec Miata in Spec Miata against other cars that abide by the same rules. So you can travel as much as your wallet allows you to travel the country. You can go from the West Coast to the East Coast to the Midwest, down south, all the tracks that you've seen on TV and heard about. If your organization with your race car goes to that track, you can race there too. And it's awesome. It's a blast. It opens up the realm of cars and the racetrack and racing and traveling, and all these things come together and you get to feel like your own little pro race car driver.
That's why we all do this, right? We have these aspirations. Or maybe we don't have those. We start off with this idea that like, I don't even know if I really want to try this, but I do feel like I've gotten to this limit with my track day kind of thing, or I would like to try it. I'm a little intimidated, but I want to dip my toe in these waters and see what it's like. And you find out it just lights you up. It really gives you something that maybe nothing else in your life has ever given you before, right? That feeling of competing, that feeling of being there in the moment, the camaraderie of being out there with other people who follow the rules to the point where we're all trying to do the same thing together. So it is an equal competition. That's what makes it a sport and not some kind of like game of chance, right? Where somebody figured out how to work around things and that's why they won. Now, that's not to say that all racing is clean, but we'll leave that out of this discussion. For the purposes of club racing, people generally follow the rules. People generally are out there to do the right thing and are friendly about it. And they want you to win, right? It's not fun to see the same person win every time. So it's even more fun among a club to see progression of the people maybe who weren't that fast before, watching them get fast, watching them start to win races. And, you know, that dynamic among the group, it's really exciting. I can't think of anything else that quite compares to it.
Well, this has been a concise introduction of how to transition from track driving into competition race car driving.
Get out there and race.
Hopefully it's been helpful. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Sylas.
Thanks, Todd.
Next time, drag racing.